It was supposed to be just another quiet Saturday afternoon. The sun was out, kids were riding bikes, and my daughter was in the front yard, giggling as she played with her toy. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until it wasn't. From across the street, Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, stormed down her driveway like a storm brewing on a clear day. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the air as she screamed accusations I couldn't understand at first. And then, without hesitation, she reached into her purse and pulled out a gun. My heart dropped. Through the front window, I saw my daughter freeze. The toy slipped from her hands. Her smile vanished. Karen took a step forward, arm outstretched, finger trembling on the trigger. My daughter screamed. It was the kind of scream that breaks something inside a parent, the kind that turns your blood to fire. I bolted out the door, yelling louder than I ever had in my life, but Karen didn't flinch. The neighbors started to come outside. Some filmed with their phones. Others simply stood frozen in disbelief. Sirens blared in the distance, but time felt like it had stopped. And all I could think was, thank God for the cameras. Because that day, as my daughter trembled and the neighborhood watched in horror, the footage from our hidden surveillance system was quietly capturing everything, every word, every threat, every second. It would be the evidence that not only saved us, but destroyed her life forever. When we moved into the neighborhood, we thought we'd finally found it. A peaceful, tree-lined street where kids could ride their bikes and neighbors waved from their porches. After years of apartment living, this place felt like a dream come true. My wife and I were excited to give our daughter a childhood full of front-yard soccer games, lemonade stands, and lazy summer evenings. The house was modest but perfect for us. Everything seemed right. It didn't take long before we met Karen Mitchell. She introduced herself as the HOA president before she even said her name. Her smile was tight, practiced, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. She handed us a printed welcome packet that felt more like a rule book, highlighting sections in yellow with a sticky note that read, "Important." At the time, I shrugged it off. Some neighborhoods have strict rules, and Karen just seemed like someone who took her role a little too seriously. At first, it was minor things. Karen reminding us about trash can placement, lawn height, and making sure holiday decorations came down within 48 hours of the actual holiday. She wasn't exactly warm, but she wasn't threatening either. Not yet. We figured she was just particular, maybe a little lonely, and tried not to make waves. But even as we tried to settle in, something about her always felt off, too watchful, too eager to insert herself into our lives. Still, we never imagined she'd cross a line. We never imagined she'd become dangerous, and we certainly didn't think our peaceful new home would turn into the center of a neighborhood scandal, one where our own child would be at the heart of it all, and Karen Mitchell would go from HOA president to public menace overnight. Things started to change just a few weeks after we settled in. At first, it was easy to overlook, the kind of stuff you chalk up to nosy neighbors or a tight-knit community with high standards. But Karen didn't just enforce the rules, she hunted for them. She patrolled the neighborhood like a security guard, clipboard in hand, jotting things down with unsettling intensity. One morning I stepped outside to find a notice taped to our mailbox about non-compliant grass height, citing HOA Regulation 14B. I didn't even know grass could be non-compliant. Then came the basketball hoop. We had set it up for the neighborhood kids, mounted securely and tucked out of the way near the driveway. Within 2 days, Karen was at our door, informing us it was visually disruptive to the community aesthetic. I tried to reason with her, suggesting we move it to the backyard. She simply raised an eyebrow and said, "I'll be watching." That phrase stuck with me more than I wanted to admit. Soon after, it wasn't just about the house or the yard. It was about my daughter. One day she drew butterflies in chalk on the sidewalk. A harmless, joyful thing, That evening, we found another notice in the mailbox. Defacement of community property will not be tolerated. Then came complaints about the music she played while jumping rope. Karen even took pictures of her from across the street. It was beyond petty. It felt personal. I caught Karen more than once parked at the corner, pretending to be on the phone while watching our house. When my daughter would walk home from school, she'd take the long way just to avoid passing Karen's driveway. There was a weight hanging over our home now, a slow building pressure that pushed deeper every day. I tried to tell myself it would pass, that this was just an eccentric woman with too much free time and too little kindness. But deep down, I sensed something more, something brewing under the surface. It wasn't just about rules anymore. It was about control. And the more Karen felt like she was losing it, the more I feared what she might do to get it back. By the time summer rolled around, Karen's behavior had gone from annoying to deeply unsettling. She wasn't just enforcing rules anymore. She was enforcing her own sense of power. The whole neighborhood started to feel it. Parents whispered at the park. People pulled their trash cans in faster, trimmed hedges with military precision. But it wasn't fear of the HOA. It was fear of Karen. She had become something of a watchdog, lurking behind windows and hedges, always watching, always ready to strike with a violation notice or a thinly veiled threat. One afternoon, I watched her storm across the park to scold a group of kids for laughing too loudly near the picnic tables. My daughter was among them. Karen stood over her like a warden, finger wagging, voice sharp enough to slice the air. The other kids scattered, and my daughter came home shaken, clutching her water bottle like a security blanket. That night, she asked if she had done something wrong. I assured her she hadn't, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. That was the night I installed the cameras. I placed them discreetly, above the garage, near the porch, one tucked in the tree above the driveway. I didn't tell anyone outside the family. I wasn't trying to catch her. I just wanted peace of mind. I needed to know if my instincts were right or if I was simply being paranoid. It didn't take long to get my answer. The footage showed Karen walking past our property several times a day, stopping to peer through our windows, occasionally taking photos on her phone. Once, she paused at our fence and muttered something under her breath before shaking her head and walking away. She began leaving notes, not just printed HOA notices, but handwritten ones. "You're being watched," one of them read. Another said, "Children should not run wild like animals." It was signed only with a K. I tried to confront her once, calmly and respectfully, but she acted completely oblivious. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice saccharine and smug. "Maybe you're just feeling guilty about something." That smugness, that confidence. It was as if she believed no one could touch her. She held her position like a badge of immunity. But the cameras didn't lie. And each clip I saved was a silent promise that her reign of intimidation wouldn't go unchecked forever. It was a late August afternoon, the kind where the air hangs thick and the sun casts long, sleepy shadows across the pavement. School was starting soon, and we were trying to soak in the last few days of freedom before schedules and routines took over. My daughter had just come outside to play with a new foam dart blaster she'd gotten for her birthday. She wore her favorite t-shirt, the one with the sparkly unicorn, and had a line of bright orange darts tucked into her waistband. She wasn't near anyone's yard. She was playing by herself on our driveway, laughing as she ran back and forth, firing foam darts at invisible targets. I was inside on a work call when I heard the first scream, not from her, but from Karen. It pierced the calm like a siren. I rushed to the window and saw her marching across the street with terrifying focus. She wasn't yelling yet, but her body language said everything. Her stride was sharp, and her right hand was inside her purse. My gut twisted. I dropped the phone and bolted for the front door. By the time I stepped outside, Karen was already standing at the edge of our property, screaming something about weapons, safety, and how my daughter was threatening the community. My daughter froze, foam blaster dangling from one hand, the darts clutched in the other. She looked up at Karen, confused, trying to understand how a toy could cause so much rage. And then Karen did it. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver pistol, raising it just enough that the sun caught the barrel. My daughter screamed. I've never moved so fast in my life. I was shouting, running across the lawn, waving my arms, placing myself between them. I didn't think. I just reacted. "Put it down! Are you insane?" I yelled, my voice raw. Karen's face didn't flinch. "That child pointed a weapon at me," she said, voice tight and trembling. "I have a right to defend myself." "It's a toy," I snapped. "She's 10. She was playing on her own driveway. You just pointed a real gun at a child." Neighbors started emerging from their houses. Some gasped. Others fumbled for their phones. A few had already started recording. It was chaos, but also silent in a way, like the entire neighborhood was holding its breath, trying to comprehend what they were seeing. My daughter had dropped the blaster and was crying so hard her knees gave out. She sat on the driveway, arms wrapped around herself, shaking uncontrollably. I held my hands up, trying to calm Karen down, hoping to God she didn't make another move. A few moments later, the sound of sirens broke the stillness. Red and blue lights turned the corner, and Karen finally lowered the weapon, though her hand still gripped it like she was clinging to righteousness. The officers arrived quickly, separating everyone. I gave my statement while my wife held our daughter inside, trying to soothe her. Karen insisted she felt threatened, that she mistook the toy for a real gun, that she only acted in self-defense. But even as she spoke, the truth was already out there. The footage had it all. From the moment she stepped off the curb to the second she raised the pistol, it was captured in crystal clear detail. What she didn't realize was that the same cameras she'd mocked, the ones she'd claimed were excessive, were about to become the only witnesses we needed. That night, after the police left and the house finally fell silent, I sat down in front of the monitor, hands still trembling. My daughter had cried herself to sleep in my wife's arms. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that gun, small, silver, and deadly, pointed at the person I loved more than life itself. I needed answers, but more than that, I needed proof. So I queued up the footage from the camera mounted above our garage, the one that looked directly over the driveway and into the street. I hit play, and the truth unfolded in stark, undeniable clarity. There she was, Karen, stepping off the sidewalk with purpose. She wasn't startled, she wasn't panicked, she wasn't reacting to anything. My daughter wasn't even facing her. She was giggling, firing foam darts at the fence, totally unaware of the fury heading her way. Karen's stride was steady, her posture deliberate. She shouted something just before stopping at the edge of the lawn. Then, with chilling calm, she reached into her purse and pulled out the gun. No hesitation, no fear, just cold control. I watched it again and again, each time noticing new details. My daughter's confused expression, the way she instinctively raised her hands, the neighbors slowly appearing in the background, Karen's finger grazing the trigger. It was all there, frame by frame, second by second. She wasn't defending herself. She was asserting power, punishing a child for daring to exist outside her control. I saved the footage to a flash drive and backed it up on the cloud. The next morning, I called the lead officer on the case and asked him to stop by. When he arrived, I didn't say much. I just pressed play. He watched in silence, jaw tight, eyes narrowed. When it ended, he exhaled slowly and stood up. "This changes everything," he said. That afternoon, 2 squad cars returned to the neighborhood. Karen answered the door with that same condescending smile, but it faltered quickly when they asked her to step outside. I watched from my porch as she was handcuffed, the weight of her actions finally catching up to her. For all her smug confidence, she hadn't expected the one thing that never lies, the lens of a camera. What she thought was just another power play had become something irreversible, and the world would soon see her for exactly what she was. Karen's arrest sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. By sundown, everyone knew what had happened. Text threads lit up, social media groups exploded with speculation, and neighbors who had once nervously waved from behind their fences now gathered on sidewalks, speaking in low voices and exchanging theories. Some couldn't believe it. Others said they'd seen it coming for years. But no one could ignore the footage. It circulated like wildfire, shared in private messages, uploaded anonymously to a community forum, and eventually landing in the hands of a local news station. The headline read, "HOA President Pulls Gun on Child Over Toy Dispute." The video clip, just under a minute long, showed enough to send chills down anyone's spine. There was no dramatic editing or narration, just raw footage of a woman in authority, calmly raising a firearm toward a 10-year-old girl playing in her own driveway. It was the kind of image you couldn't unsee, the kind that made you question the people you trusted to lead your community. The police charged Karen with multiple offenses: child endangerment, aggravated assault, and unlawful brandishing of a weapon. Her attorney attempted to argue that she had felt threatened and confused the toy for a real weapon, but the video made that defense nearly impossible to maintain. In the end, the prosecution pushed for a plea deal. Karen was sentenced to probation, ordered to complete anger management and a psychological evaluation, and barred from holding any position on the HOA board ever again. Legally, she avoided jail time. Socially, she was exiled. Within days, the HOA held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove her from her role. Neighbors who had once feared her now wanted nothing to do with her. Parents who had tolerated her strictness now treated her like a pariah. She tried to act like nothing had changed, showing up at the grocery store or walking her dog with her usual self-importance. But people crossed the street to avoid her. No one made eye contact. The power she once held had turned into a shadow she couldn't shake. Some residents, oddly enough, defended her. A small handful claimed the media exaggerated things, that she was just trying to keep the community safe. They said kids today were too wild, too disrespectful. But even they couldn't argue with the footage. Karen didn't just lose her title, she lost her reputation, her standing, and her illusion of authority. As for our family, we stayed. We thought about moving, about putting the whole nightmare behind us, but something in us refused to be chased out. Our daughter began therapy and slowly regained the confidence Karen had tried to steal. I kept the cameras up. The neighbors we once barely knew became our support system. And in a strange way, what was meant to intimidate and control us ended up bringing the rest of us closer together. Karen had tried to fracture the community. Instead, she ended up uniting it, against her. In the weeks that followed, the chaos slowly settled into something quieter, but not quite peace. The headlines faded, the neighborhood returned to its routines, and the video, once viral, was buried beneath the internet's next outrage. But in our home, the aftershocks remained. Our daughter, once fearless and full of laughter, became quiet. She wouldn't go outside alone. Loud voices made her flinch. At night, she asked to sleep in our bed. And when she dreamed, it was always the same thing: Karen, standing in the driveway, holding that gun. We tried to shield her, to remind her that she was safe, that Karen couldn't hurt her anymore. But the damage had been done. Fear had taken root in her young heart, and no legal sentence could undo that. Therapy became part of our weekly rhythm. At first, she barely spoke, but slowly, piece by piece, She started to open up. The crayons she once used for sidewalk butterflies now filled sketchbooks with fierce strokes of color. Storms, shields, and finally sunshine. My wife and I talked often about moving, about starting over somewhere far away from HOA politics and loaded guns in purses. But each time we circled back to the same conclusion. If we left, Karen would win. This was our home. Our daughter deserved to grow up knowing she didn't have to run from fear. We chose to stay, not just for her, but for us. Neighbors dropped by more often. Some brought cookies, others brought stories. One man across the street, who'd never said more than hello, offered to walk our daughter to the bus stop each morning. A woman from 2 blocks over invited us to join a community watch group she was starting. What Karen had shattered, others helped rebuild. There are still moments when the memories creep in, quiet, sharp reminders of that day. But there's also strength, a newfound sense of purpose in protecting what matters. We've learned that sometimes the monsters aren't strangers hiding in the dark. They're neighbors who smile too tightly and wear authority like armor. And we've learned that the truth, once captured, has the power to break that armor apart. We didn't just survive Karen's rage. We stood up to it. Together. As a family. As a neighborhood. As people who refused to be silenced. We moved to this neighborhood believing it was a place of peace. A place where families could grow and children could play without fear. We never imagined that the greatest threat to that peace would come from someone meant to uphold it. Karen Mitchell wore her position like a badge, believing it gave her the right to control, to intimidate, and ultimately, to harm. But when she crossed the line, when she pulled a weapon on a child, she exposed the truth about what unchecked authority and a warped sense of power can become. The cameras didn't just capture her crime, they revealed her character. And in doing so, they gave us something that fear had tried to take away: our voice. In a world where so many stories go untold, where victims are too afraid to speak and the powerful often walk away unchallenged, that footage spoke for us. It held her accountable when words might have failed. It showed the world exactly who she was, and it ensured she would never hide behind her title again. But more than anything, this story is about the strength of standing up, of not running, of choosing to fight for your family, your truth, your right to live without fear. It's about the neighbors who stepped in when it counted, about the little girl who found her courage again, about a community that refused to be controlled by intimidation. If you take anything from our experience, let it be this: always protect what matters. Speak up when it's hard. Document everything. Because sometimes, justice isn't found in courtrooms or headlines. It's found in the quiet, steady click of a camera that never blinks. Karen thought no one was watching. But we were. And now, so is the world.